Welcome all to the 2022 RICO Symposium. It is really good to see you all. For those that I haven't met, my name is Elena Ionescu, and I am the SCA's Chief Sustainability and Knowledge Development Officer. That's a new title for me since I was last on the RICO stage in 2019 here in Boston. It's one of a few different changes that I've experienced over the past 3 years, including I have a lot more hair now. I know I'm not the only person who has experienced significant personal changes over the past 3 years, and it's pretty difficult to avoid all of the macro level changes going on around us all the time. But what about at the level of the specialty coffee industry? Somewhere between the personal and the macro geopolitical, where are we right now? I mean, in many ways, it's an exciting time in specialty coffee. A Colombian barista just won the World Barista Championship using a coffee species that many of us had never heard of, Eugenioides. We'll hear more about that in just a few minutes. You know, we're also seeing all sorts of different growth happening, coffee processing happening. We're seeing Blue Bottle Coffee announce that plant-based milk is going to be the default for its milk beverages in its Southern California stores. You know, these are signals of things that are different now. At the same time, it's a difficult time. Now, government support for small businesses impacted by COVID-19 has dried up, and yet, for many people, customers haven't returned in their pre-COVID numbers, to say nothing of the challenges of customer service in 2022. Since 2009, the RICO Symposium has brought people together to try to grapple with the big picture questions of where we are now and where we're going. I'm going to spend the next few minutes here on stage giving you a bit of an orientation to what we're going to talk about and what's going to happen over the next 2 days. And then I'm going to join you in the audience. I'm really looking forward to listening and learning alongside you. So, for the past 10 years, maybe more, I've been hearing different takes, dozens of them, on what the fourth wave of specialty coffee is, or will be. Is it inclusivity? Is it farmer centricity? Is it applying science to coffee brewing? You know, regardless of what you think, I think that in this rush to discover and claim what's next in specialty coffee, we risk losing sight of where we are now and why that's important. As far as I can tell, we're here. And this in-between space, you know, the space between waves isn't wasted space. It's transition space. And transitions are really valuable. So let's take a few minutes and talk about them. I'd like you to raise your hand if this slide looks familiar to you. Have you seen this before? Anyone? Kind of looks like waves, right? This is a visual depiction of the Bridges transitional model, which was developed in the 1980s by a man named William Bridges to help individuals and organizations cope with change and succeed in it. Bridges posited that many of us, when faced with an external circumstance of some kind, some big external change, will rush through it, trying to reach the desired outcome as quickly as possible, and will underestimate the inner psychological work that has to take place, which he called the transition. So change is external, transition is internal. For Bridges, a transition begins with an ending. So once the old starts to dissolve and someone begins to be able to let go of it, they begin the transition, and it ends when they're fully established and they have a sense of purpose in the new order. And for him, what happens in the middle is crucial. The neutral zone is that middle space, and it's going to be something of a motif for us over the next 2 days. The neutral zone is a challenging place because people, organizations are between identities when they're here. It's not a space of clinging to the past, but it's a time when it's not possible to, or an individual organization is not ready to fully embrace the new. In 2006, William Bridges, who passed away in 2013, described the neutral zone this way. The neutral zone is a time and a state of being in which the old behaviors and attitudes die out, and people go dormant for a while as they prepare to move out in a new direction. It is a dangerous time for organizations, but it is also a time when innovations and experiments have an especially good chance of succeeding. Only after going through each of these first two phases of transition can people deal successfully with the third phase, beginning over again with new energy, a new sense of purpose, a new outlook, and a new image of themselves. I first learned about the Bridges transitional model in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Great Resignation. It's hard to imagine a bigger external event than COVID. And the changes that it has wrought on the lives of all individuals and organizations are largely outside of our control. And we are all going through myriad transitions simultaneously, some of which are probably complete, some of which will take a long time to complete. At the same time, we've seen unprecedented numbers of people reacting to this external change they didn't choose by choosing change for themselves in factors that they can control, for example, changing careers. And whether this change is something that we choose or not, I think that keeping in mind Bridges' exhortation to move slowly would serve us, because while the desire for control is totally relatable, I'm not sure that it's always in our best interest to rush. I hope that this model resonates with some of you the way that it did with me when I first learned about it, from the Zigzag podcast, if you're interested in checking it out. But here's why I think that it's relevant to the coffee industry. Even before the pandemic began, it was clear that big changes were afoot in specialty coffee. We were seeing familiar brands be acquired, in some cases by the same few mega companies. We were seeing growth being driven by markets outside of the major metropolitan areas in the US and Europe that had incubated specialty coffee in its early decades. And we were seeing an explosion in experimentation by coffee producers and processors that were bringing out flavors that we might never have imagined were possible. But all of these changes, now, they were happening to us, we were experiencing them differently. There was no single factor that affected everyone, and it would have been challenging to stand on stage 3 years ago and say, wow, everything is so different for all of us. And now, that feels like kind of a no-brainer. But even while we can recognize the big, maybe even existential change that we have experienced collectively, it will still be important to maintain our awareness of the transitions that we're going through, depending on the individual, the business, the community. As we are moving through our transitions toward whatever our new beginnings are, we are going to be moving at different speeds, maybe even different directions, to end up in different places. So let's return to the ocean. Instead of arguing about what the fourth wave is or will be, what if we situated ourselves further from the shore, in a place where winds and currents move water, and to create small waves that move in many different directions at many different speeds? We might not even be able to see the shore from where we are, but it doesn't mean that we're not moving. Over the next 2 days, we'll hear from speakers who will give us some perspective on what might be the opportunities that we have if we can let go of a singular narrative. Speaking of singular narratives, an event like RICO is really a collective effort, and it's an honor for me to be the person on stage presenting on behalf of the team that put this program together. I am going to talk a little bit about what's going to happen over the next few days. which is a result of conversations that we've been having for the past nearly 6 months about what the purpose of this event would be this year, and what kind of opportunities we have in a unique environment like this one. We knew we wanted to bring people together for learning and discussion, to taste delicious things, to draw from a variety of disciplines, and to challenge some of our thinking. I hope as you look over the list of topics that we'll be exploring that you find some things that are familiar to you. And I also hope you find some things that are unfamiliar. You know, if you don't agree with the idea that a speaker puts forth here on stage, or the title of one of the seminar sessions kind of irritates you, that's okay. We're not looking to build a consensus here in this group. And we have structured the event to allow for more opportunities for different kinds of knowledge to be pursued. And here's what I mean by that. So we'll begin this morning with a panel and presenters here in the first plenary session in this room. Then we'll break for coffee just outside those doors, come back for a second plenary session, go to lunch, third plenary session in the afternoon, and then we're going to do something a little bit different, which is seminar sessions.
What are seminar sessions?
Thank you for that totally unscripted question. Seminar sessions are, for our purposes, small group discussions. So we have 4 of them running concurrently, organized loosely into 4 different tracks. You can choose to stay in a track, or you can jump around from one session to the next. There will be 4 total seminar sessions over the course of the 2 days. And they are designed to be more interactive, a chance to kind of work through some of the topics that we are talking about and hearing about, rather, on the plenary stage. You know, one of the things that's been pretty rare over the past 2 years is the chance to talk to people that you don't know in person. So I feel like that is going to be a particularly precious part of this event. And if you agree, you're thinking, yeah, definitely, that's me. I especially encourage you to check out our facilitated networking that's happening in the last session today and then tomorrow as well. I also, of course, encourage you to talk to your neighbor when you're waiting in line for coffee, over breakfast, lunch, at the reception tonight, and in our conversation lounges. So, you know, one of the features of RICO that I have always appreciated as a RICO delegate is being able to sit in this room and then also explore a variety of different spaces and still participate. So we have 2 lounges in the, let's see, the Burroughs room and one of the other seminar rooms, where you'll find couches and coffee service, and you can also see the talks that are happening on this stage streamed there. So if you need to finish a conversation or check your email, or you just want to break from this particular environment, then please take a minute, sit in the conversation lounges, which are so generously hosted by Simonelli Group and FETCO. Mentioning that, this is probably as good a time as any to thank the sponsors for this event, without whom it really wouldn't be possible to do everything that we do at RICO. So Simonelli Group, Sucafina Specialty, FETCO, Pacific Foods Barista Series, Pentair Everpure, Chemex Brewista, GH Grinding and Brewing Solutions, Savor Brands, Mir, Rishi Tea and Botanicals, and Center Cafe. Thank you all so much. So last night at the opening reception, I roped some of you into helping me write stories about specialty coffee using the rules of a game called The Exquisite Corpse, which I found out some of you were already familiar with. In this game, the first line of my coffee story had been written, and then each contributor wrote a subsequent line. But here's the trick. You could only see the line that immediately preceded yours, as well as the opener. So contributor number 5 saw the first line, and then the 4th line. Contributor number 12 saw the first line and the 11th line. We made 3 of these, and I've chosen one of them to read to you. You can see the other ones in the Griffin Room. Here's how the story goes. Once upon a time, there was a coffee, and it was special. The coffee tree would wake early to take in the beauty of the rosy red sky. It would stretch slowly and turn its leaves, giving waves of gratitude to the sky. The coffee tree represented so much in the lives of the people. It brought everyone together during a time of challenge. It's a tough time to grow specialty coffee, but when you get the best minds in coffee together, amazing things happen. Coffee connects the world in a wonderful way, said the jaguar, as she posed with the green buyer with his brand new boots. She wondered why his laces were mismatched and already ratty. Yet, they locked eyes while taking their first sip, and both asked, "Is this drip?" "I'm happy you asked," the barista replied. So this game works best when contributors engage their creativity and take the story in a completely unexpected direction. You can go in so many different directions from the first line of any story. And that's where we are in specialty coffee today. We have the first line of many stories written, and we're seeing that the expansion of the coffee industry is leading to more complex and interesting and surprising stories all the time. Some of these stories are going to be familiar to us, like the story of the waves, and other stories won't be, because they come from the perspective of a different coffee consuming culture, because they're written from a different location in the coffee value chain, or because they're written in a language that we can't yet read. But we all have a role to play in writing these stories. So I hope that we will approach that with all of the powerful openness of the neutral zone, a time and space when experiments and innovations are particularly likely to take root and succeed. Thank you.